Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Y'all, Jimmy, the Chaos Goblin, strikes again. I should have known better than to mention I was working on my DC Universe meets Ravenloft hybrid D&D campaign on social media. My bad. He goes and tags a bunch of comics creators we know, and now I have to get it in gear and whip this campaign into shape so we can start playing. Another friend chimes in, "Are you going to make maps?" It's fair to say it's been a while since I put something together, so I guess? Question mark? It was then that I discovered Arkenforge. If you don't know who Arkenforge is, they have everything you need to make your TTRPG more fun and immersive, allowing you to build, play, and export animated maps, including in-person fog of war capability that lets your players interact with maps as the adventure unfolds while you, the DM, get the full picture. Now I'm set to easily build high-res animated maps, saving myself precious time and significantly adding nuance to our campaign. That's a win every day in my book. Check them out at arkenforge.com and use the discount code YETI5 to get $5 off. I'll drop a link in the show notes for you, and big thanks to Arkenforge for partnering with our show. I think I'm going to make Jimmy play a Goblin Warlock just to get even.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Yeti's Cryptid Creator Corner. I'm one of your hosts, Jimmy Gasparo, and I'm really excited. We have a first-time guest on the podcast today, has a new book coming out through Band of Bards, which I'm a big fan of, considering I was in one of their anthologies, and always excited to have a Band of Bards creator on the podcast. This new comic book is Big Guns Stupid Rednecks. Please welcome to the podcast, writer Austin Allen Hamblin. Austin, how you doing?
Man, I am doing fantastic. Fantastic.
Okay, so let's get into it right now because you were my first question right off the bat. You were kind enough to send over an advanced reader copy of Big Guns Stupid Rednecks, and I read through the issue. Great premise. I don't want to give too much away when we talk about it, and we can talk about the creative team as well. But I was wondering, because I've seen some of the videos you've put out on TikTok, kind of getting folks to pre-order. So is this, taking literally taking a shot at rednecks, or is this like, these are my people and I feel I can do this?
Yeah, it's very much these are my people. So
Okay.
I grew up in rural Iowa. I literally live 4 blocks away from the house I grew up in. I went to a tiny Catholic high school where I would say we had 42 in our graduating class, and probably 30 of them are farmers now.
Oh wow. Okay. So that's rural.
Yes, very rural. We had less than 200 people in the whole high school.
Oh wow. Okay.
But rednecks, yeah, there's a country music song that says I'm the son of a third generation farmer, and I actually am. So my dad farmed and he worked at John Deere. And for those who don't know what John Deere is, they make tractors and they make all kinds of heavy machinery. And so my dad did both of those things, and then he popped out a son that said, "Hey, I want to write comics."
Well, because wait, what song? 'Cause what song is that? I'm the son of a third generation farmer.
Oh man, I
I'm
could
gonna.
sing the whole song, but it's like I'm the son of a third generation farmer. I've been married 10 years to the farmer's daughter. Oh man, I'm gonna have to look this up now because I don't
All
know.
right, I'm curious. Yeah, because I'm a big fan of. I grew up on. I'm from Delaware County, Delco, right outside of Philly, but I grew up on country music, so I still listen. I think I'm more of a fan of like 80s into the 90s. Country
Oh
was
yeah.
kind of like my wheelhouse. Like sometimes I'll put on I got the Sirius station in my pickup truck. I think it's Prime Country is the one, if you are familiar with Sirius. And I still know, I think the words to, I'd say 85% of those songs when they come on. Especially if it's something in my range, like a Randy Travis. I'm all over it.
Oh yeah. That's the stuff. So like 80s and 90s country, that's the stuff I grew up listening to too, because that was what my parents listened to.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that was like, it wasn't until I got older that then I like got into like heavy metal and like Slipknot and stuff. But I grew up on country, so I have like deep, like it's funny because I always, like when I was younger, I always wanted to like escape the redneck-esque parts of my life. Like I was like, I don't want to be associated with this. And then I just like as I got older, I realized that I couldn't, and I was okay with that. And like a lot of times, so like I love rednecks, and I think a lot of times people will clump rednecks in with closed-minded people, and that's not necessarily true. I don't like closed-minded people. Rednecks are the hardworking, salt of the earth people that will give you the shirt off of their back. They are genuine good people that care about it. They're a community. There's a big community aspect to that. I sell a ton of comics to people that don't read comics. They're just people that know me from the area and want to support me.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're going back the traditional, you know, definition, redneck farmer, somebody who's out, they're working in the field, they're fixing their tractor, they're doing that whole thing. And yeah, I mean, over the years, the idea of somebody who is a farmer, grew up on a farm in a rural area, kind of went through a transformation from like a, you know, the idea of like a local yokel to country bumpkin to the
Right.
idea of a redneck now. And then you get all kinds of different pop culture or cultural identity stuff mixed in there. But you're really kind of taking it from like I know these folks and these are good people in terms of the people that are supporting you and that you grew up around, and you're having a little bit of fun. And yeah, I like that. I really like, I mean, it seems like you're pouring a lot of the I wanted to get away from this area into your character of Clint. Um, you know, right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's cool because like I used to feel that way, and I since have changed. And but yeah, with that character, I mean, it's like the kind of the little quick rundown
Yeah.
of the comic is after a sudden string of disappearances in the southern part of the United States, retired detective Clint has to search for his white trash brother Clay, and after searching for him, he ends up getting abducted by aliens. And it turns out his brother is in the ring for Big Guns Stupid Rednecks, Intergalactic Cable's newest hit show, which features rednecks in laser gun gladiatorial combat against each other. And his brother is the reigning champion with 27 kills.
You know what? I love how fast you kind of like get into everything. I mean, like, cause it really has a nice pace to it, and then when it takes off, it kinda takes off, and I like how I never knew exactly what to, you know, expect. Was this gonna be a brother against brother fight? Were they gonna team up? Like, every, you know, page turn, although I was reading it digitally, um, like, you just, like, ramped up the stakes in terms of, "Oh, now it's a battle royale. Now it's, oh, a television show. Now there's, like, ratings involved. Now there's this whole intergalactic world," and it was done in such a way that, you know, the reader never felt lost, and, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I really I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I am a big advocate of there's not enough fun comics. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there's like there should be comics for everything. There should be social commentaries. There should be superheroes. There should be everything. But I think there's just not enough just fun. Like like for every Citizen Kane, there's going to be a Michael Bay movie, right? And that doesn't mean that the Michael Bay movie has no merit. It's still enjoyable. And I
Sure.
love like Ryan Brown's work, Kyle Starks, like those guys. They just do fun, weird comics, and that's kind of stuff that I want to make.
Oh yeah, I agree. There's a place for everything. I mean, I've said it a million times on this podcast. This is like a brand new golden age if you're a comic book fan. Like if you there's no reason by anybody, even if you've never read a comic before, there's no reason why you can't find something you like. I mean, there might be some areas where there's, you know, room to grow. You know, they're like in the 50s and 60s, there used to be more like romance comics, and but we're even seeing some of those, and in terms of slice of life, you know, making a comeback. But you know, there really are comics for, you know, just about everything. And I know you're, I think, a big fan of professional wrestling. So I really feel like that love infused in this as well. And when you can take something you love, like comics, professional wrestling, and kind of get those two involved together, it really is a great match. No pun intended. Actually, I did intend that pun. I lied. I intended that pun.
It was a good one. I liked it. People always say like one of the advice that everyone always gives like new writers is write what you know. And it's like I know rednecks, like I know pro wrestling, I know, like I know weird stuff. Like let's throw all of this together and let's make something fun.
Yeah. And you did, and I really thought it was a really fun, like, kind of like wild ride, and I didn't know what to expect, and yeah, really enjoyable, like really great, like just super fun first issue. And so tell me about the rest of the creative team in terms of the art and coloring and lettering.
Yeah, so the artist is a her name is Mariana Maria, and she is a Brazilian artist who she's a SCAD alumni.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, and we kind of met through Twitter and meshed, and she did the art and the colors for it, and it it's funny because a lot of people are like, I don't feel like this is like this would art should fit this story, but it fits perfectly. And I agree with that. And that's such a weird compliment to say. Um, but yeah, she did a fantastic job. And she was so easy to work with and easygoing. And she, I'm big in like comics are a collaborative medium. So like working with her, she's like, throwing me suggestions like, "Hey, how about we do it this way?" And I'm all for this stuff as long as it makes it better. And so there's definitely she made me look very good, and I really appreciate that.
What I really liked about the art style, and I kind of see what you're saying because you know, you could do a ton of different things with this. Like you could definitely have like a more like realistic style. You could definitely go, darker and gritty. And it's always interesting to see like how different artists would tackle, the type of story. Like if somebody like, Martin Simmons, like who's done the artwork for Department of Truth, like what would this look like if he were to handle it? But you know what? But what I like is the element of fun is and the there's it takes a little bit of what could be a harder edge off. You could definitely push in that direction, but the art style really, um, cartoony is the wrong word, but there's definitely like an animation style to it that I really appreciated, and I just really thought it made sense within the story itself, and in particular when not I don't want to really spoil anything, but there's a part where Clint kind of gets more involved in the show of it all, and there's almost like a montage of the different things that they are doing, and it's great, and it all works, and you're seeing alien creatures and different rednecks fighting, and I think there were rednecks versus hipsters, and it was really great.
Yeah, I think one of the big the my favorite things that she did was that in the first half of the issue when he's searching for his brother, the colors are very dark and and moody. But then when we get into the alien stuff, it switches to very vibrant and bright and to this crazy new world. It's kind
Yeah.
of like the flipping of a coin, and she did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it's definitely evident there on the page.
And I also want to give a shout out to the letterist or word balloon man, John Ira Thomas, who is a personal friend of mine. He's a local Iowa guy as well. He has been self publishing comics since the '90s through their publisher called Candlelight Press, and he learned how to letter out of necessity because pre internet you can't just put out an ad for somebody. So he
Yeah.
learned how to letter all of his own comics that he was writing, and then I met him at a con and we hit it off. I kind of say he is the future me. Um, and so, because I'll be doing this in 30 years still. And he did an awesome job on it. And like he makes all the graphics for like when we've gotten some quotes from some pros and we've done, and it was cool to get to collaborate with him on this. And we're going to be doing a signing for the first issue together. So unfortunately, she's off in Brazil, but the two of us are within an hour driving distance. So when issue 1 comes out, we'll be signing in Iowa City.
Oh, that's awesome. When is issue 1 coming out? It's the end of August, right?
Yep. August 28th, which happens to be Jack Kirby's birthday. So I will be smoking a big fat cigar to celebrate Jack's birthday and signing some comics the way he would want me to be doing. So
That's right. That's right. Every August 28th, smoke a big cigar, punch a Nazi, and celebrate Jack
absolutely.
Kirby. Oh, that's fantastic. And so, how did the comic end up? How'd you end up like with Band of Bards? Did you pitch to them? Where is this a story that you've been shopping around for a while? I'm just kind of curious because I know you've crowdfunded some of your comics, previously.
Yeah, so like I've been doing comics since 2012, and I've been like kind of everywhere on the indie scene. And this has been something that there's been many incarnations of this with different artists, different colorists, and I had pitched at places, and there was always like, this isn't quite our thing, and got close a couple times, it didn't happen. I ended up doing a 7-page lead-in short story to this universe that got published in an anthology by Top Cow, and the artist for that was Donnie Tran, and Chris Northrup did the colors, and it was awesome. For whatever reason, Top Cow was not interested in continuing on with that, but I had a perfect pitch right there because it ends on a massive cliffhanger. And I had these copies of the anthology, and I would go to conventions and I would give them away to people. And people will always tell me, it's stupid to give away your work for free. Well, one of the people I gave this to uh, emails me the day after I give it to him and says, "Do you have more to this story?" And I go, "I have a whole pitch written for this." And he goes, "I think this place that I'm working with, Band of Bards, might be interested." And the guy's name is Chuck Satterley. And he hooked me up with them, and they're like, "Let's do this." I had everything ready. It was one of those things where it was just like the perfect situation.
Yeah.
And then ended up with Band of Bards, and now we got a 3-issue miniseries coming out.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, I love it. Yeah. And, going to cons and doing that, making those connections. Chuck's been on the podcast before. So I really like Chuck, and I like, a lot of his work, and he's done a bunch of different things in comics and took a break and then came back. And yeah, Chuck's awesome.
Yeah, it was a really cool thing, and and it's just funny because the people are always like, don't give away your work for free, and it's like I get where you're coming from, but sometimes it pays off. You get something in the right person's hand, and now I'm here. I wouldn't be on your podcast if it wasn't for me handing him this anthology.
Yeah, that's true. And with this 3-issue miniseries coming out. Yeah, so you have been doing comics since 2012. Like I said, you've kickstarted some, and you've done different things in the industry. I think before we started recording, we had said that you had an internship with a comic book publisher previously, and you've had things published with through the anthology with Top Cow. I know you've done work with um, Phil Hester, who is well known in the very well known in the industry. But before we talk about some of the other comics you've done, I kind of wanted to ask, like, what is it about like comics that drew you to them, and has it been like a lifelong passion of yours to want to write comics? I mean, since you've been you don't seem as old as I am, and 2012 was 12 years ago, so it sounds like you started pretty early.
Yeah, so my first self-published book came out my senior year of high school.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
I knew from like 8 years old that this is what I wanted to do. I had kind of been tinkering around reading comics. Walden's books, which no longer exists, used to have a spinner rack, and there was one in the mall. And so when I'd have to go to the mall for whatever reason, I'd make my mom buy me some comics, and they'd usually be like Bongo titles or Sonic the Hedgehog. And I was always
Yeah.
kind of into comics, but I wasn't fully sold until my uncle would give us gift cards to Barnes and Noble every year. And I was like a reluctant reader. And I said, you know what? I'm going to buy comics because that's not real reading. And I bought Marvel Masterworks Volume 1 Fantastic Four. And the second I read that, It was it. It was over. I was hooked. It was sunk into my brain. I was in love at first sight, 8 years old.
Right.
And
And now you're a reader. You've not only
yes,
found your love of comics, but you've now become a reader as well.
absolutely. I will never be able to repay my Uncle Dean for this because literally by giving me a gift card, he changed the course of my entire life, for
Right.
better or for worse. But the reason that I wanted to write comics, and I've always been like a really creative person, but I also at times in my life I've had very poor mental health. It's something that I constantly struggle with. I've got really bad depression and anxiety, and I'm very open about that. I want people to feel like they're not alone and to know that other people deal with these things because when I was 15 years old, I felt like I was the only person in the world that felt that way when in fact that wasn't true.
Right.
But I would, pick up my comics on Wednesday and I could slip away into this universe for 10 minutes and forget about all my problems. I wasn't depressed anymore. I was worried about what Frank Castle, how he was going to get out of this situation, or how was Grimes going to survive the zombie apocalypse? Whatever it was,
Yeah.
it pulled me out of my reality, and I want to be able to do that for other people, and that's why I want to write fun comics because I really want them to not even, think anything sad, just to be able to escape. And if I can do that for some people, then mission accomplished. Money, career, that's not what's as important to me as helping people escape their reality.
Well, I mean, I think that's a noble endeavor. I mean, especially the issues with mental health in this country, in the world, at large, are not seeming, not getting any better on their own.
Right.
And I'm a big proponent of trying to destigmatize, mental health. I went my degree at college was in psychology. It was something I was always interested in, and uh, yeah, it's something I talk about a lot. And I've dealt with anxiety my entire life, and I was very good at listening to other people and trying to let them know that if you had a broken arm, you'd go to the hospital.
Right.
If something's not if something's not clicking, if you're dealing with anxiety or depression, you could talk to somebody. There's a million different types of therapy. It's not always medicine. There's talk therapy, but I was terrible about taking my own advice
Your advice.
until, in my 40s, and finally started going to counseling, and it's been unreal, and kicking myself that why didn't I just sit down and talk to somebody sooner, and it helped immensely. So I think that idea of being able to present, even if it's, you don't have to write, your your masterwork that's going to take all those things and solve mental health. Like you can just provide that escape for somebody to not be in their own world, in their own head for 10 minutes, to be in that arena with Clay and Clint and sitting there imagining some fellow, intergalactic travelers that they're sitting there and enjoying an Earth beer and wondering who's going to win. And that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I'm very happy for you that you have found something that works because but not a lot of people do, and some
Yeah.
people give up because it is hard. No, it's not easy, but it's definitely worth it. And yeah, if there's anybody listening that feels that way, you're not alone. And there's a lot of us out there, and the world is better off with you in it.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. For any listeners out there who are struggling, uh, the world is a better place with you in it. And you always have a friend here at the Cryptid Creator Corner. That's what we try and do. It's why we love comics, and we try and connect people with the thing that they love, and I think that helps. It may be a little, but
Yeah. All right, let's take a quick break. Hey, comics fam. Indie comic book publisher Band of Bars just got a level up and announced it is now a cooperative. This heralds a new era for them, including a partnership with Dauntless Stories. And they added several new members to the ownership group. Marcus Jimenez is now Chief Operating Officer, Brent Fisher takes on the role of Chief Diversity Officer, and Joey Galvez is introduced as Head of Kickstarter Ops and Social Media Manager, which is sure to increase their capabilities overall as a publisher, and it further promotes their mission statement of advancing representation, inclusion, and diversity in the media. They also established a new board of directors to help chart the new path of their journey. With new projects in the works like Alas Goodbye dropping in June, Unbroken soon launching on Kickstarter, and Pond coming up with Dauntless, stay tuned to this space for more exciting news from the growing Bards family. Let's get back to the show.
What was it in not just your love of comics, but when you really started to pursue, writing? Was it like a school class, or were there writers that you wanted to emulate? Did you pick up a book like, Stephen King's On Writing, or you're just like, I'm just going to figure this out as I go?
Yeah, so I was very big DIY guy, and I bought some books that were like, how to make graphic novels and stuff like that. And then I looked at the book and I looked at who the authors were of some of these books, and I'm like, this guy's never made a comic in his life. Why do I want his advice, right? So when I was 10 years old, I saw something online about how there was going to be a store signing at a comic book store for Phil Hester. And at the time, I didn't know who he was, but he was a guy that was doing what I wanted to do. I was so ecstatic and would not shut up for days about how I was going to meet someone that makes comic books for a living. And so I went to the signing. I picked up one of his books and I'm like, I want to make comics. Like, what do I need to do? I don't know, and he was just like, hey, all you got to do is just make the comics. Like all you need is paper and pencil and you can make comics. And it was the simplest answer in the world, but to me it felt like he had just solved cancer. And then over the years I just kept seeing Phil at conventions and at store signings, and we eventually became on a first name basis, and then I started actually creating comics, and then we got even closer. And I call him my comic book dad because he has two children. One is a year older than me, and one is a year younger than me, and neither of them have anything to do with comics. They don't even read comics. And then my dad is Farmer Joe, so we kind of fill out the voids in each other's life. So I call him my comics dad because he's been able to help me and teach me, and I've been his assistant for probably about the past 3 years, something like
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it was on your website or something else that I read that you had written when I was, doing my little bit of research before the podcast, which I thought was fantastic advice for anybody who's trying to make comics. And you said Phil Hester told you, to take one of your scripts and try and draw it out. You're like, well, I can't draw, but just try and do it. And you quit. From what I recall, from what I read, you essentially quickly learned that what you were trying to capture on the panel, like either couldn't be done, couldn't all fit in, maybe two actions going at the same time. And you were like, Every writer should try and do this to really understand what a script needs to look like to go into the paneling." And I'm like, that it's absolutely the best advice if you want to try and write comics, if you've never done it before. Just write a short 4, 5, 6 page script, but then try and use stick figures, panel it out to see if it makes sense. And I was like, yeah, Phil, he knows what he's talking about.
Oh man, it changed the way that I looked at things. I was looking at everything sideways, and then this turned my head upright. And it's cool because like when I write things now in my head, I'm conscious of how will this look on a page. And like it's funny because like it kind of like the page gets drawn in my head as I'm writing it, and
Okay.
it's not always the same as what usually the artist does a much better job than uh, what I come up with. But
Uh-huh.
there have been times where I've done pages where I'm like, I have a very specific layout, and I do draw it out along with the script and send it to them, which sometimes can offend people, and it's not meant like that. It's meant as just to try to help. And I remember doing that once, and it was for a short story, and it was one that Phil read, one that I had written when I was 18 or 17, And
Okay.
Phil was like, "This page," he goes, "This shouldn't work, but this works amazing, and it draws the eye here and this." And it was like, it was the greatest feeling in the world because I'm like, I drew that page, and then he just drew it better, you know? And so it was like, I'm doing something right.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, that feeling of, you know, especially that it shouldn't work and it does.
Mhm.
There's something about when that happens, in comics. It's just a great it's just a great feeling, like when you see it, and it is, you said it earlier, it's such a collaborative medium. And I love writing a script, and you get it back, and the artist will tweak something or change a little thing, and they take your words, and you saw it one way in your head, and they, you know, put it through their filter, and they put it on the page, and there's no better feeling when you get that art in your inbox.
No, the only better feeling is holding the printed copy in your hand. That's the
Yeah.
only thing.
Um, so in terms of some of the different things that you've written, whether or not it, was for an anthology or some of the comics that you've, self-published, you like, what is it? Punk and Rock, The Adventures of Punk
The
and
Adventures of
Rock.
Punk and Rock, yep.
And I saw some of the other stuff you'd kickstarted. I was looking at like Steel Wool, and I know a couple other things that you've done. I think you had a comic on Tapas. Was that Saboru?
Yep, Saburo, yeah, yep,
Saburo. Okay,
yep,
my
yep.
apologies.
No, you're
Um,
fine. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I could be I could be wrong.
so is there like because I haven't gotten to read everything. I've looked at little snippets, but do you think there's a through line? I mean, other than I want fun, I want people to have an escape. Is there something that you think you gravitate towards in terms of the stories you like to tell?
Yeah, absolutely. There's one thing that is an element in every story that I write, and it's that there's a little bit of humor. It may not be the main focal point, but there's just a little bit to, take the tension away because that's just the kind of guy that I am. Me and my closest friends, all we do is give each other crap constantly. I joke around. I'm a prankster. I pull pranks on my brother-in-law, and he pulls them back on me, kind of thing. That's the main thing. Like, and most of my stuff is like it comes from, hey, wouldn't it be cool if?
Yeah.
Which maybe isn't the most. That's not. I don't know if Stephen King is like thinking. Cujo didn't come from that, but like Big Gun Stupid Rednecks did. So.
Yeah. No, I'm sure every once in a while, Stephen King does. Wouldn't it be cool if, like, that's how Maximum Overdrive got made.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that.
I'm Well, if you've seen the movie
That's
or
true.
read anything about the production, um, yeah, that's the one where the comet makes all the electronics and the cars come to life.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's the one. Yeah, but in any event, I think everybody at one point in time has one thing. So I don't think there's anything wrong, with taking that approach. Other than uh, ha- infusing some things into your character in terms of the point in your life where you're like, I wanted to escape my rural upbringing, or escape small town Iowa. Um, do you think like where you grew up has influenced your writing in other ways? Like, is that a real focal point of your storytelling? Like being the son of or a third generation farmer?
Yeah. So I think I do look at things a lot differently because essentially my whole life I've been an outsider. In a town. So like my high school, the most important thing was wrestling, and I played the tuba. You know, I was the only kid at my school that was reading manga, let alone even knew what manga was.
Yeah.
Pro wrestling, I was the only one. Sci-fi movies, that was pretty much me. And it does, and that's not to say that I didn't have friends because I absolutely did. Um, but when everyone around you is so much different than you, it does change the way that you see things and think about things. And I'm definitely a people watcher, and I think that because of the situation that I had, uh, you know, my mental health also goes on top of this. I can understand people and where they're coming from a lot more. Um, I may not necessarily agree with some of the things they have to say, but I can be like, no, I get that, or I can get inside that person's head, and I think that's kind of a unique thing that had I been more like the people that I grew up around, that I probably wouldn't have that.
There's we've heard stories or seen stories, whether or not it's TV, movies, or books of, somebody being kind of an outsider, and often in that story they go through a period where they do try and fit in, or they go a different direction unless they have somebody in their life that is kind of like, hey, comics are cool, wrestling is cool. Did you have you said you had friends, did you have your own group of friends that like love those things? Did you have like a family member who was like, sci-fi is great, man, let's go?
Yes, so I had a relative. He would technically be my father's cousin on my grandmother's side, right? So my second cousin. I know that's pretty far out there. Uh, but I had two cousins. His name were Gary and Alan, and they were lifelong comic fans.
Oh, okay.
They and I had always like kind of knew them, but once I started reading comics, my grandma was like, "You need to you need to go talk to Gary and Alan. I think you guys would get along real swell." And turns out they loved pro wrestling too. And you know, I have relatives that I'm technically closer to in bloodline, but I am so much closer to the two of them. Unfortunately, about 5 years ago, Al passed away,
Oh, I'm
and
sorry to hear that.
Al left me his entire comic collection. 40 years of collecting. He was a single guy. That was where his money went. And so in the past 5 years, have read a lot of comics that I wouldn't have normally bought. But I was like, I'll try this because, it's not going to cost me anything. Um,
Wow.
and one of the coolest, I had a really cool moment a month ago. And I'm sorry that I'm just a little short story. Um,
No, no, please.
about a year after he passed away, and I was slowly, because there was so many comics. I mean, 40 years of a serious collector. He read Marvel, DC, and horror books, so he had a ton of stuff. But I read the Jim Starlin Death of Captain Marvel about a year after he passed away, and that really helped me process his death, um, because I was so close to him, and his death was a very unexpected thing.
Mm.
He was in the hospital, but they told me that he was gonna be sent home the next day, and the next day I get a phone call and said that they're moving him to hospice, and then he died about a week later.
Oh my
And
gosh.
last month, at convention in Des Moines, I got to meet Jim Starlin, and I got to tell him what that story meant to me, and I got to talk about Al to Jim Starlin, uh, at this convention, my friend actually had a table next to him, and he's like, everybody's coming up to him, and they just want to talk about Thanos, 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 Infinity Gauntlet, and I got up there and talked to him about that, and we had probably a 20-minute conversation. He told me about its inception, how it got made, and everything. And I got to shake his hand, thank him, and take a picture of him. And that's just one of the magic things in comics that, like, you would never get that in film. Like, maybe you would get that feeling from a movie, but it's going to be super hard to meet that director or actor. But in comics, the legends of the industry are so accessible that I get to walk right up to this man, who made an impact on my life, and just tell him. And
Yeah.
it was awesome.
No, I'm really thank you for sharing that, Austin. That's a really, it's a terrible, sad thing, but I mean, it's a really beautiful story, though.
Yeah, it meant a lot, and Jim was fantastic.
Well, I appreciate you, sharing that with me and with the listeners. Um, it's kind of an amazing thing that comics can do that, and I mean, what a wonderful thing that you shared you know, with your cousin as well,
Yes.
while he was here, sharing that love of comics and pro wrestling.
Yeah, it's funny because we used to always say that if anybody listened to us talk about comics or pro wrestling, they would think that we hated them because all we did would be complain about stuff. But you're like, no, no, you don't get it. We love this stuff more than life itself.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. But yeah, I mean, growing up, we were fans of I have a younger brother, and we were fans of, pro wrestling and would watch it, and we're a fan of comics. Like, my brother Bobby, who I shout out every episode because, he's the Cryptid Creator Corner's number one most dedicated fan. He listens to all the episodes, but Bobby and I go to Baltimore Comic Con every year. Bobby reads like a ton of comics, and we share a pull list at the local shop near me, and we have a cousin, Jack, who wanted to celebrate he's down in Florida, wanted to celebrate his 40th birthday this year. And he did that by taking Bobby and I to WrestleMania in Philly.
Oh, awesome. That is so cool. I'm jealous as hell right now.
And I mean, I liked wrestling when I was younger. And but I hadn't watched, I didn't know any of the storylines. I hadn't watched WWE in years. Jack gave us a quick rundown of what to expect, but man, being there at the link at WrestleMania,
It's an experience, man.
yeah, we were the Jack went both nights, Saturday and Sunday, and we with a different cousin, and then we went with him on Sunday, and yeah, it was crazy being there.
That's super cool.
Yeah, and it was I mean instantly was like back into it. Like it was just
Right. It's a different thing live.
oh, and
So different.
oh man, and leaving the place and driving home, back to Delco afterwards, and just all the jokes. I mean, I think we probably said bloodline rules like 40 times.
I acknowledge my tribal chief.
we just kept making up all these scenarios wherever and there was even a mild annoyance, like somebody's taking too long at line in front of you, and you're just like bloodline rules, and just
Cut him. That's fantastic.
So in any event, thank you for this digression. Thank you for allowing this digression, listeners. Please, hopefully you're still listening, or send me your own frustrating scenarios where you just want to yell bloodline rules,
Do whatever you want,
and hit somebody with a steel chair. Yeah. So, um, did you have a lot of different projects going on at once? Are you the kind of writer that will kind of tackle one thing at a time, or do you always have a couple irons in the fire?
Yeah, there's a lot going on at once. It's funny because I'm promoting this. I'm on a planning board for an anthology that's going to launch in a few months. I've got a comic being drawn right now that we're going to pitch around called the Celebrity Purgatory Murders. That's almost finished.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I've got a bunch of short stories being drawn. I wrote a memoir that my sister is currently editing. Yeah, it's just, and it's funny because the memoir, I don't expect anybody to read, but I just wanted to write it for myself. So I did it, you know.
Well, look, I mean, I don't think it doesn't matter who you are or how much you've accomplished. If you're writing something that's, authentic, there's a market for it. You know,
I,
I think that's the case no matter what. I had a conversation with my friend who is a songwriter, and he said he's been stuck, and he's telling me all these different songs that he's been trying to do, and I'm like, I'll be honest with you, buddy. I think the issue is that you keep trying to do something that you think people want to hear, and he's like, well, what do you mean? Like nobody wants to hear what I have to say. I'm a 44-year-old guy doing this, that, and the other thing, and I'm like, yeah, you've had an interesting life, like.
right.
You're the problem is that you're not being authentic. You just you have a family, you have 3 kids, you've done a million different things. Every time something bad happened, you were able to pivot and find your way. You're just not, you know,
Yeah.
you need to figure out, you need to just be authentic, and you're going to find your voice. You're trying to force it. So I think if you're writing something that's a memoir and you're like, I don't think anybody will read it, but if you're putting yourself out there and being authentic in your writing, then I think people will want to read that.
No, it's nobody can do you but you. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That's it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Well, that's I like the title, Celebrity Purgatory Murders.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm digging it. Title alone, I'm at least curious.
Apparently, I'm good at titles. Big Guns Stupid Rednecks, Celebrity Purgatory Martyrs. That's
Well, I mean, Big Guns Stupid Rednecks is like, you're just like, well, what is that? It could be anything. It really could be. You could open it up and it's just like, oh, this is like this is a treatise on, you know, whatever. But you're delivering on the Big Gun Stupid Rednecks. So
thank
yeah, it definitely is a lot of fun. One of the things you said when I was asking you about your through line with your comics, you talked about your, sense of humor, having a little bit of humor in there, being a bit of a prankster. Is like that prank kind of picking on my friends? Is that kind of like your wheelhouse in terms of humor? Like what were those things that really made you laugh growing up that you feel like, oh, this is what I gravitate towards. Like if I want to laugh, this is what I'm going to put on, or this is what I'm going to read, or this is what I'm going to do.
you. This is gonna make me sound like such a horrible person. But I only do this with close friends. But like, we just tear into each other and make fun of each other, and I don't know why. Like that, it sounds like such a horrible thing, but it's fun. And I was just actually talking about this person today. Like Norm Macdonald. Like Norm Macdonald is one of my favorite comedians of all time. Like
Yeah.
I love stand up. I'm very like, free speech. Let's push the line. I like stuff like that.
Oh wait, I mean Norm was hilarious, and nobody did it like Norm Macdonald did.
And that's the proof of nobody can do you but you, because ain't nobody there can be no other Norm Macdonald.
No, no, and some of the things he's a perfect example of a comedian who some of the things he did shouldn't have worked and were so funny. I can't remember whose roast it was. Maybe it was the Bob Saget roast. Where
Yeah.
they didn't want him to curse, so he just came out and did like the jokes from like an old joke book, and it killed.
It was yeah, that's the exact one. It's so funny. I'll sit there and go on YouTube and watch like 2-hour Norm Macdonald interview compilations and just sit there and just die.
Oh yeah, there were some of his appearances on like on Conan.
Conan
That
is where
yeah, they were
they're the best.
great, So yeah, absolutely. Um, well, I mean, I get it. I have friends that I went to law school with. We still get together for lunch. We have like a text chain going, and my one friend Mark and I, like that's all we do. Like Mark and I constantly make fun of each other.
Right.
I mean, we say things, just terrible, awful things.
People would think you hated each other, but in reality, you really love each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Love the
that's
guy
it.
to death.
Yeah.
And we've been doing it I've known Mark for 21 years now. And we've been doing it for like 20 of those 21 years. And if anybody else read the text, they'd think like, these guys, they should not be in a room together. Neither one of us have ever gotten our feelings hurt by anything the other has said.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Everybody knows, yeah.
Mark knows that he could call me up at 3 a.m. and say, I need something, and I will be there.
Right.
I'll be there by 3:05, And yeah. And it still makes we just had lunch, the three of us, because one of our friends couldn't make it a few weeks ago. And man, I hadn't laughed that hard since, in weeks and weeks, just constantly cracking up. And that's awesome. And if that's what you like to do, and everyone's on the same page, then that's a beautiful thing.
It is. And it's funny because the people who are hearing this, there's two reactions. The people who get it are like, oh yeah. Other people are like, I don't understand this at all.
Something wrong with this guy.
Yeah, right.
Oh no. Austin, this has been great.
Yeah, this is fun. This is fantastic.
So Big Guns Stupid Rednecks coming out through Band of Bards, August 28th. Check your local comic shop, listeners. Let them know that you want it as soon as you hear this. I'm sure that they could be able to order it. I think some of Band of Bards stuff is available on their website as well.
You can get it right through their website as well.
Yeah,
Yep.
so even if you get this and it's past what we call the final order cutoff, but contact your local shop. check the Band of Bards website. I put links in the show notes to, all those things. You can follow Austin on social media. He's doing a series on TikTok called I think it's Iowans in overalls, which is it's wonderful, wonderful stuff. Very avant-garde. You'll love it. So I'll put a link to Austin's TikTok as well. But yeah, Big Guns Stupid Rednecks, August 28th. You're going to love it. It's a lot of fun, and get it, read it, escape for a little bit, find out what's going on with Clint and what happens once he locates his brother Clay, and the shenanigans that they get into. Austin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, this was a ton of fun. Thanks, man. Thanks everybody who made it this far. You are a real one.
You absolutely are. Thank you, listeners. As I think we just passed like 250 episodes. So I definitely want to say
congratulations.
Thank you to the listeners. You folks are the reason that, I do this. Also because I like talking to comic creators. So yeah, I really appreciate it. I absolutely do. Big Guns Stupid Rednecks, August 28th, Band of Bards. Thank you very much, Austin Allen Hamblin. Really appreciate you coming on. See you next time, everybody.
This is Byron O'Neill, one of your hosts of the Cryptid Creator Corner, brought to you by Comic Book Yeti. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of our podcast. Please rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. It lets us know how we're doing, and more importantly, how we can improve. Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Cryptid Creator Corner, maybe you would enjoy our sister podcast, Into the Comics Cave. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.